Man, I am stuffed right now. I just ate dinner and had some amazing salmon. Probably not what you think about when I say salmon, though. I'm talking about just salmon. No sides, no toppings of any kind, not even pepper. Just put some salt on it, fried it in butter. That was my dinner. This video is about nutrition, but on a very fundamental level. Before getting into specifics about, certain diets, about my diet, about what your diet might look like, there's something really important to talk about. Mindset. You could try to hop on the perfect diet tomorrow, thinking you'll achieve your goals. Let's say maybe you've just gotten into fitness and you want to achieve some kind of dream physique. Maybe you want to perform better in the gym, right? Maybe it's not about visuals, maybe it's about what you can actually do. But chances are, unless it's somewhat similar to your current diet, you won't stick to it for long. The reason why is you're wrong about food. Before I tell you what I mean, if you aren't interested in changing your eating habits, this video is not for you. I'm talking to those who would really like to change something, who see problems with their current diet, want to get in better shape, whatever it may be, but feel like they can't, or struggle to do so. Maybe have tried to get on a diet and, not held out for very long, or not seen the results they had hoped for. Without further ado, let's get into what this video is about. I spend a lot of time on my own. I don't really like socializing just for the sake of socializing, at least not very often. Once in a while I'll be in the mood, maybe go to a birthday party or something of the like. But generally speaking, I like to be productive in some way, shape, or form. So even when I'm meeting with friends, it's usually to do something. When I spend more than 2 or 3 hours with other people, on the rare occasion that this happens, that I'm actually spending time with people, just hanging out. And we spend more than a couple of hours with each other. They are going to see what I eat, right? Because at some point, obviously, I gotta eat throughout the day, just as anyone else has to. And people are usually quite weirded out by my food choices when they find out more about my diet. So this might be because we've spent time together a couple of times, they've seen what I eat on a more general basis, not just, my specific food choices for a certain meal. They develop more of an idea of what I generally eat like, right? They get pretty confused about how I can stick to that kind of diet. Especially when they ask me questions about what it is specifically that I eat. And what they are referring to when they, get confused, when they think I'm being weird, is the fact that I eat almost the same every day. And I also eat some meals that are fairly bland. An example would be, there will be cases where I'll just have 400, maybe 500 grams of skyr, an Icelandic yogurt-esque food, let's put it that way, with nothing else. No berries, no honey, or whatever people put in that stuff. I don't know. Just the skyr. That's an example of one of the bland things I eat. And oftentimes they will have a very negative reaction to the way I eat. At the very least, they find it quite strange. In many cases, they will make fun of the way I eat. And some of the things I've heard, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but in terms of the actual message, some of the things I've heard quite often when people talk about the way I eat is, I could never do that. I need XYZ. How can you eat that? That's so boring. I love food too much to, eat like that. All of this is cope. That might sound a little harsh right now, but it is. All of this is cope. And I'm going to tell you why. I am not some special being that has never eaten good food. I've eaten both well-cooked meals and highly processed junk. As a teen, when, I got a slightly higher allowance, I got some more money from my parents every week, I would buy tons of snacks for the weekend and binge on sweets, potato chips, all of that stuff. I also drank copious amounts of soda, probably my biggest sin regarding nutrition, up until very recently. Mainly caffeinated, stuff like Coke, and I did so for years. So this is not something I did for like a couple of weeks or maybe a few months. This became like an actual habit. I would spend more or less all the money I had, all the money I got from my parents, which was not a lot compared to other people. I didn't exactly grow up in a wealthy family. Not that we were incredibly poor by any means, but I had a very small allowance compared to other people. And I would spend almost every dime of that small allowance on junk food, on soda, on snacks, which I would indulge in over the weekend. So it's not like I have always been crazy disciplined or just had great habits from the start, right? And effortlessly managed to eat the way I do now to achieve my goals in regards to fitness and health, etc. It's also worth mentioning that my parents are fairly good cooks, some of the best cooks I know personally. So I arguably ate more diverse food than most people for much of my life. And I was also used to a very high standard of food, right? So in essence, I lived with very good food and also a very diverse diet, a very diverse selection. My mom would cook Eastern type meals, would cook with a lot of Eastern vegetables, stuff like that. My dad was more so into Western food. He does a lot of specifically German food very well, also some American food. So there was a great range of food, and all of it was pretty well done. So the way I eat has nothing to do with me being unnatural or particularly weird in some way. This is important. The fact is I'm not weird. Your perception of eating, of meals, of food is weird. It's not that I'm strange. You're wrong about food. People think every meal tasting really good is normal, that food should be delicious. Working class people today eat a lot of meals that are more flavorful than the food of an early medieval king. Some of the shit you can buy at a supermarket for $1, a couple of bucks, would have been insane, unbelievable, the food of the gods for people a few hundred years ago, 1,000 years ago. Which maybe sounds like a long period of time, but really isn't in the grand scheme of things, if you consider how long humans have been around. Medieval society was already significantly more advanced than the natural setting under which the people who we are developed evolutionarily. Here's a wild truth for you. And, maybe at this point you're thinking, what is this dude talking about? Where is he going with this? What's the point of all of this? Why am I saying this? The truth is, the natural human baseline is no food. That's the natural baseline. No food. And anything you wish to eat must be hunted or gathered. Depending on the location you live at, right? Depending on where your tribe was settled. Maybe you were part of a nomadic people that moved around, but even then you would be in one location at a time. Your food sources were very limited. Obviously, right? A certain biome only has specific animals, specific plants, specific mushrooms. So there would have been very little diversity, and obviously many modern flavor combinations could never have existed due to the origin of the components. Lots of sauces that we have nowadays, lots of fairly typical, fairly established ways of preparing certain meals never would have been a thing, never could have been a thing, because if you even just look at the spices, some of those grow on one side of the world, some of them grow on the other side. Try to imagine this setting. Really, close your eyes. And for a minute or two, try to imagine being a hunter-gatherer, having no food. That's your default. No food. And anything you want to eat, you have to hunt or gather. Imagine you've had nothing but a few roots or mushrooms, maybe some pine branch tips. Maybe you were lucky, had some berries for days. Okay? Now imagine walking into a clearing. Right there on the ground is a cup with 450 grams of creamy skyr, ready to eat. Right there. Cup, skyr, spoon right next to it. How would you feel about that? Be honest. In this situation, for most of you, it's probably hard to even imagine being in that setting. But that would be the natural habitat of humans as they have developed through evolution. And imagine in that habitat stumbling upon this sight. You would be stunned, overjoyed, fascinated by the taste, the creamy consistency. You would think, what god of nature, what magical force created this food? People's perception of what food is totally warped. A meal that tastes decent enough, that doesn't taste bad, and contains valuable nutrients should be cherished. I love foods like skyr because it's simple. It doesn't taste bad, but it's not overly flavorful. So, I can eat a fairly large amount of it because I think some of you, or maybe even most of you, can relate. If something has a very intense taste, even if that taste is absolutely delicious, you can't eat a huge amount of it. In many cases, maybe it's quite salty or quite sweet, and your mouth is just going to go into overdrive. You can't handle as much. Skyr doesn't taste bad, but it's not super intense, super invasive. It also, contains what my body wants. Skyr is a food that's high in protein, contains a little bit of sugar. It's made from milk. Essentially no fat, and just a very large amount of water as well, some micronutrients. So when I'm trying to get some protein in without stacking up on other macros, it's exactly what I want. It's easy to eat. It's just a type of yogurt, essentially. It's quite creamy, not as runny as some other types of yogurt. Transportable, etc. I could list a bunch of reasons, but these are just some examples for this specific food of great characteristics that people will not consider. There are lots of things that are great about this food, and just skyr with nothing else that people don't even think about. There are so many great things about it, yet people focus on its lack of flavor. That's all it is. You're wrong about food. What most of you think is normal is a late-stage decadence. Again, this sounds kind of harsh, but it is the truth. If you love food, why do you need 4 different components and 15 different spices in every meal? Why do you need sugar in every meal? Sugar and fat. Why does everything you eat have to contain sugar and fat? Even if it's just to a tiny degree. Have to be crazy spiced. Why do you have to put sauce on everything? If you love food. That's like someone saying they love to work out, but could never hit the gym without music and pre-workout. What? I thought you loved to work out. I will love my child more than anything once it's born. But only if it's a literal anime protagonist. Otherwise, that little guy is trash. Obviously, this is an extreme comparison, but you get what I'm saying. I'm actually the one who truly loves food. because I can still appreciate and cherish it in its simpler forms. There's nothing wrong with eating something delicious, even processed food and drink once in a while. That's fine. You can even cook every day. The important thing is that you don't feel like you need any of it. I eat simple because it's easy. It saves a lot of time, energy, mental capacity. I am often surprised by how much brain power people invest in their food, in shopping. I buy the same things every time I go shopping. I'm in the supermarket, and the supermarket I go to is like one of these mega stores, or what they're called. I'm not really sure. So that place is huge. I'm in there 20 minutes max. Maybe 30, 35 if the line is crazy long. I just buy the same things. I don't think about what I buy. I know what I have to buy. There's nothing to think about. And all of this is energy and mental space that I can utilize for other things. Think about that. That doesn't mean I hate tasty things. And I do indulge in something that's tasty every once in a while. I'll have like a week, maybe even a month, where, I don't take my diet as seriously. I'm a little bit loose with it. Maybe I'll have some sweets. Maybe I'll order some food, some takeout. Right? I don't hate great food. I don't hate tasty food. It doesn't mean that I can't enjoy a well-cooked, intricate meal. Just that I'm not dependent on it like a crack addict needing his fix. I don't need it. And the truth is, neither do you. Now that I've gotten the main point of this video out of the way, you might be thinking, all of that is great, but how do I actually change my perception of food? Because I've been talking about you being wrong about food a lot, but how does that actually help you? Right? You want maybe some actionable steps on how to change this. I've written down some quick tips to change your perception. I'm not a nutrition expert or anything of the sort. These are just some examples of how I went about getting to the point where I am now. And I've sort of summarized the journey I've gone through and generalized it a bit more. I'd recommend you follow these 3 tips in order, but, maybe your journey is different. Number 1, eliminate some subsection of your diet. This can be very simple. When I got into fitness a little more in my teens, I cut out sweets from my diet, which I loved. As I told you before, I was binge eating sweets like every weekend. But I kept salty snacks and soda. Now, to anyone who knows anything about macros and, the specifics of nutrition, this might sound stupid. What's the point of not eating any sweets anymore, but you just eat different kinds of junk food? The elimination will make you realize you don't need this aspect of food. There are lots of other great things to eat. So this is just a first step on your journey to fundamentally changing the way you behave towards food. Okay? We are not at the stage yet where you are, following the perfect diet. Because that's not going to work very well if you just jump to that from whatever your diet may be right now. Experiment with different things. So either You start with, something like sweets. It can be something entirely different. And then you eliminate more, or you eliminate a different part of your diet, right? So maybe you cut out something like sweets for a certain period of time, and then you switch to something else. The important thing is that eliminating these singular aspects of your diet will make you realize, I don't need this. I'm still eating. I'm still having food. There are lots of great things that I can still eat, despite, restricting myself in this way that I cannot eat this certain type of thing. As I said, I'm pretty stuffed, so bear with me here. Number 2, eat a restricted diet. This goes for 2 different aspects of your diet. So, first of all, fixed things, ideally simple foods, something like skyr, just plain carrots, that sort of thing. No crazy, fancy meals that are super complicated. And or fixed amounts you are allowed to eat and times at which you are allowed to eat them. So, for example, you are only allowed to eat past 11 a.m., something like that. If you're only allowed to eat at specific times or after a certain time of day, like I just mentioned, eating becomes more special. You will appreciate the food you eat more. This goes for most things, really. If you do something every day, it's not as special as when you get to do it once a week. And that's the only time you get to do it. If you do something all day, it's even less special. Because you are eating these simple foods, they will be the ones you appreciate more. And you will learn to love them for what they are. This can be something like skyr. Again, it can be something different. But by combining these 2 things, right, you can only eat at certain times or only past a certain point in the day. And the things you are eating are simple. Not only are you appreciating the food you eat more, but the food that you are appreciating more is specifically simple food. And you will learn to love these small aspects about it. You will learn to love the consistency of something like skyr. The way it's just so satisfyingly filling after you haven't had anything for the last 4 or 5 hours since you got up. Simple, small things like that. The crunchiness of carrots. Right? Whatever it may be that you choose, there's something great about almost any simple food. And you will learn to appreciate it through these 2 things. You can do this in 2 steps, but I recommend doing both. So, restricting what you eat and or the amounts, ideally both, right? And restricting the times. So you don't learn to love a bad food even more, right? If you restrict the times at which you're allowed to eat throughout the day and then you still eat trash, that's just going to make you appreciate the trash way more. Or if you don't restrict the time, but you do eat very simple food, maybe you just feel bored eating simple food all day because you're eating all day, and so it's much easier to get bored with the food. Step 3, eat what you have to first. Prioritize simple foods that will give you what your body needs first. An example of this would be protein. If you are, let's say, into bodybuilding or powerlifting, and you need a lot of protein. This is something many people who eat a typical Western diet, whatever type of diet it may be, really struggle with, because carbohydrates are incredibly common in Western diets. And many people will struggle to eat the amount of protein, to manage to get in the amount of protein they want to eat or should eat in a day. This is just an example. Might be something else. This totally depends on your goals. But this is a good example because it's quite simple. In the case of something like protein, you can eat something like skyr. You can eat something like eggs, just eggs. And you eat these first. So these are your priority of the day. And you must eat these. So even if you, miss a meal early in the day, you have to eat this. Even if that means, stuffing it in at the end of the day. That might sound a little counterproductive right now, but it will condition you to eat these specific meals every day. You have to eat them. Everything else is extra. So to give you an example, maybe in my case, I have usually 2 skyrs and 5 eggs every day. And these are the things that I must eat. And then on top of that, I will have some extra protein in the form of usually meat with my carbs and my fat. But the 2 skyrs and the eggs are what I must eat in a day. It's not hard for me to eat the other stuff, right? Carbs are tasty. Fats are tasty. The human body wants you to eat carbs and fat, especially in combination with each other. Maybe if there's some salt involved, you can eat that forever. Eating all of that protein used to be hard. Okay? So that's where the focus should lie. So that's what I have to eat. And then I will eat those carbohydrates anyways. Or drink them. Whatever. Through this practice, develop what I will call a skeleton diet as a foundation. What I mean by skeleton diet is this is not a full-fledged diet. This is not everything you eat in a day. But it is sort of the basis of what you eat in a day. And it is what you must eat. Everything else can vary, not as important. But get what you need with absolute certainty. Develop a skeleton diet as a foundation of what you eat in a day. Then accessorize with things you enjoy. And these don't have to be incredibly healthy. Because if you make sure the skeleton diet is met most of the time, you're already way ahead of most people. Because this will probably allow you to stick to a relatively solid diet long term. Because everything that goes beyond the skeleton diet can be whatever. Doesn't really matter. In my case, the skeleton diet makes up such a big chunk of what I eat in a day that it's virtually impossible for me to screw up my diet via the other stuff I eat. I can't even eat that much in a day, right? Obviously, you are restricted in the amount you can possibly eat in a day. So if a solid chunk, a large chunk, a significant chunk of that is fixed foods, but then you also have like a decent chunk that can be just about anything. That can be something you enjoy. It can be junk food once in a while. It can be delicious, tasty, whatever. That's great. If 65% of your diet is perfect for most of the year, that's already a huge success. And if you look at me, I don't eat perfectly. I don't eat the perfect Hollywood diet all year. And I manage to stay in pretty good shape. This is the reason why. Because instead of being on a hardcore diet and then not being on a diet at all, I'm essentially always on the skeleton diet. And just what I eat in addition to that varies a little bit. And I might eat more when I'm on a bulk. I might eat less when I'm not. Sometimes I'll feel like having something that's just, terrible, really. The most processed food ever. But it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because I still got my protein and I still got in what I needed for the day. And that was such a large amount of food already that I can't eat that much junk, really. So that's really it for this video. I hope I could make this a little shorter, a little more concise, to the point than the last video. I know a lot of you are probably wondering, what does my specific diet look like? What is it that I specifically eat? Or what are some specific tips that I might have for you? There's lots of dietary info out there. I know it can be confusing. I know a lot of people say a lot of different things, but generally speaking, there is a lot of information out there. I will probably talk about stuff in the future, but this felt more important because I see many people struggle with this specifically. Not gaining information about ways in which you can improve your diet, but actually doing it. Actually sticking to a diet long term, actually changing the way they eat on a day-to-day basis. So this is what I wanted to talk about. I will talk more specifically about my diet in a future video, probably. Interestingly enough, actually, what I told you about my diet in this video, the few things I did reveal, are not what I eat like right now. I'm on a different diet currently for a limited period of time. But I will talk about generally what my diet looks like in the future, and maybe also about some more specific diets that I've tried out, benefits, downsides, stuff like that. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed listening to me talk about why you're wrong about food, if I helped you in some way, if you gained some knowledge, some insight, if you appreciate me sharing this with you, I would very much appreciate you leaving a like. Also, if you've got any questions about anything I talked about in this video, if you want to know specific things, maybe if you have suggestions for topics I might talk about in the future, if you're interested in something, go ahead and leave a comment. And if you want to know where this goes in the future, if you want to follow me on this journey of sitting here in my robe and talking to the camera, you can go ahead and subscribe. As I said in the last video, I don't really know if the notification bell is still a thing or not, but if you subscribe, might as well go ahead and activate the bell, or don't. It really doesn't matter to me. Do whatever you like. I guess that's it. Bye.